All right, so welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're doing things a little differently.
Oh, how so?
Well, we're ditching those like picture perfect leadership guides you see everywhere
Yeah,
and diving into like the nitty-gritty of what it actually means to lead.
I like it. Getting down to the real stuff.
Yeah, and we've got like a ton of LinkedIn posts and comments for this, raw, unfiltered, from folks who've actually been there.
Sounds fascinating. A real glimpse behind the curtain.
Yeah, ready to get real.
Absolutely, let's do.
Okay, so one post that really like got our wheels turning came from Alan, AJ Silber.
Okay.
And he said, and I quote, "If you're the leader, you're the last to eat, the first to sacrifice, and the easiest to blame."
Wow. That's pretty powerful and really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely a reality check.
It really flips the script on that whole, leadership is all about authority and perks idea.
Right.
Shines a light on the whole servant leadership thing, a philosophy that's been, getting more and more attention.
Servant leadership. Okay, got to break that down for me.
Sure, yeah. So basically servant leadership, it's about putting your team's needs above your own, empowering them, helping them grow, creating an environment where they can thrive.
Mm.
It's like, think of it this way. A servant leader is there to support, guide, remove obstacles, not dictate or control.
Okay, so it's less about like barking orders and more about like collaboration.
Exactly. And AJ's quote, it really highlights, that willingness to make sacrifices,
Mm.
often without any recognition.
And speaking of sacrifice, Jay Mount, commenting on AJ's post, he really emphasized those unseen sacrifices.
Yeah.
And Noemi Kiss jumped in too, said leadership is about service, not status. Like it's a recurring theme in these posts.
They're definitely directly challenges that whole traditional image of the leader as someone who's all about power. Right.
Mm.
And it really resonates with what Philip Chen said about, taking on burdens that others might never even know about.
Yeah.
Finding the strength to support everyone, even when, you might need support yourself.
It's like being the rock, the steady force, keeping the team going, even when you're dealing with your own stuff.
Yeah,
Makes you wonder what kind of toll that takes.
that's a great point. It speaks to the importance of, resilience and emotional intelligence for leaders.
Hmm.
You've got to be able to manage your own emotions, stay calm amidst the chaos.
Right. Be the steady presence the team needs.
Exactly. It's about leading by example, not just in, work ethic, but in emotional stability too.
Yeah.
And this brings us to authentic leadership, something Pavani Moparthy talked about.
Yeah, right.
She argued that when leaders are authentic, their teams are more engaged, committed, really into it.
So it's not just about putting on a brave face, pretending everything's perfect. It's about being real.
Yeah, being vulnerable, showing your team you're human too.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Authentic leadership is about integrity and vulnerability, being genuine, admitting when you don't have all the answers, being open to feedback.
That reminds me of what Christopher Angelillo shared. He said, "I've stayed up nights fixing problems my team didn't even know existed."
Wow.
And he went on to say that real leadership means sacrificing quietly so others thrive.
That's powerful. It highlights the behind-the-scenes work, the stuff that, no one really sees.
Makes you realize true leadership isn't about wanting the recognition. It's about rolling up your sleeves, doing what needs to be done.
Even when no one's watching.
Exactly.
It speaks to the commitment and dedication, that defines a true leader.
Yeah. Now, while we're seeing this whole service and authenticity thing emerge, we did see some contrasting views.
Ooh.
Yeah, like Rob Dance, he's firmly in the servant leadership camp, believes it's the only ethical way to lead.
Interesting.
Yeah, and he thinks the term servant leadership will eventually just be called leadership. Like any other approach is just wrong.
That's a pretty strong stance.
Yeah, it highlights how important, leading with humility, putting others first is to him.
For sure. However, Kate Sargent, while agreeing on the need for empathy and all, brought up a critical point about, boundaries.
Oh, okay.
She argued that true leadership sometimes means pushing back against unrealistic expectations,
Yeah.
protecting your team from burnout.
So how do you balance serving your team with setting those boundaries? Where's the line?
It's a question a lot of leaders struggle with.
Yeah, I bet.
Highlights the need for self-awareness,
Yeah.
understanding your own limits,
Right.
advocating for both yourself and your team.
And that ties into what Veena Ramanath posted about self-awareness being like a major obstacle for a lot of leaders.
Yeah, her point is key. The more self-aware you are as a leader, the better decisions you make, the better you manage your emotions,
Right.
the better environment you create for your team.
So understanding your own strengths, weaknesses, even those triggers.
Yeah, those triggers are important.
It can actually make you a better leader. It's not just about what you do, it's about how you think.
Precisely. And speaking of understanding others, Lucas Gusloff shared a story about trusting his team during a company expansion.
Oh, okay.
Instead of micromanaging, he delegated responsibility,
Yeah.
trusted his team, each of them an expert in their area, and the expansion, a success.
That's awesome. Shows how empowering your team can really lead to great outcomes.
Right. It reinforces the idea that a leader doesn't need all the answers.
Hmm.
They need to cultivate a team they can trust and rely on.
So we're back to that whole servant leadership thing, creating an environment where everyone shines, right?
It all comes back to that.
So far it seems like leadership is way more, well, complex than just giving orders.
Definitely more nuanced.
Yeah. And as we kind of wrap up this part of our deep dive, Michelle Morgan leaves us with a pretty thought-provoking question.
Yeah.
She asks, is gratitude a strength or weakness in leadership? Something to ponder.
It's definitely something to think about.
So that question from Michelle really stuck with me. Is gratitude a strength or weakness in a leader? It seems, I don't know, counterintuitive, right? Shouldn't a leader be tough, assertive, maybe even a little intimidating? Where does gratitude fit in?
It is a fascinating question, isn't it? It really challenges those preconceived notions we have about what a leader should be.
Yeah.
You'd think gratitude might make a leader appear soft or undermine their authority, but what Michelle's suggesting is that it could actually be the key to building those, really strong teams and fostering lasting influence.
So instead of demanding respect, a leader, earns it by being appreciative, acknowledging the team's contributions.
Exactly. Think about the leaders you personally admired. Were they the ones who were constantly barking orders and demanding results? Or did they take the time to, really recognize and value the efforts of their team?
Now that you mention it, the best leaders I've worked with, they always made me feel seen, appreciated. It definitely boosted morale, made me want to go the extra mile.
Right. And that's exactly it. When leaders express genuine gratitude, it creates this ripple effect. It fosters a more positive and motivating work environment, which in turn encourages team members to contribute their best work.
Yeah, it's like a cycle. Appreciation leading to more engagement, better performance.
Or a virtuous cycle.
Yeah.
So maybe gratitude isn't a weakness after all. Maybe it's actually a powerful tool for building strong teams and achieving success.
I like that.
It represents a real shift, from that transactional leadership style where it's all about commands and demands to a more transformational style, one that focuses on connecting with your team on a human level.
Right, recognizing that people want it to feel valued, want to feel like they matter.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that brings us back to those contrasting viewpoints we were talking about earlier. While we're seeing this strong theme of service and authenticity emerging, there are still those differing opinions about what effective leadership really looks like day to day.
Right, right. Rob Dance, he was very black and white about it. Servant leadership, the
Yep.
only true leadership.
He was very passionate about it. And, I do appreciate his commitment to that idea of leading with humility, putting the team's needs first. But his stance might be a little too rigid, don't you think?
Yeah, maybe.
It doesn't really allow for those situations where a leader needs to be assertive. They needs to make tough decisions that might not please everyone.
Right, like Kate Sargent was saying, she emphasized empathy and support, but also the importance of, pushing back sometimes.
Right, setting boundaries, protecting your team from burnout, from exploitation.
She really differentiated between, power and leadership.
Remember, she cautioned against that whole idea that leadership is about wielding power over others.
It's that old school command and control style, which honestly can be pretty toxic.
Yeah, sure. It creates a culture of fear, resentment,
Yeah.
which ultimately hinders creativity, productivity. Kate's advocating for a style that's both supportive and protective.
So finding that balance, being there for your team, but also knowing when to, draw the line.
It's not easy, that's for sure. It takes practice, self-awareness, and a willingness to adapt. What works for one leader, or one team for that matter, might not be the best approach for another. It's about finding the right fit.
Speaking of fit, Sonny Miller brought up the 1-minute manager, that classic leadership approach.
Oh, yeah. With its clear goals, positive reinforcement, and that immediate feedback. It's a simple framework, but, it can be pretty effective.
And it kind of resonates with the the servant leadership stuff too, right? Empowering team members, giving them the clarity and support they need.
Exactly. There's a very hands-on approach, but not in a micromanaging way. It's about being present, engaged with your team.
Yeah, responsive to their needs.
Precisely. And, this all ties back to the core of what we're talking about here, the often unglamorous, behind-the-scenes work of true leadership. It's not always about those big speeches,
Yeah.
the grand pronouncements.
Right. It's about the everyday stuff, the quiet sacrifices, the willingness to be vulnerable.
And that unwavering commitment to supporting your team, leading with integrity, authenticity,
That genuine desire to see everyone around you thrive.
being the last to eat, as AJ put it. And ultimately, it's about leaving a positive impact, not just on your organization, but on the lives of the people you lead.
Powerful stuff. So, ready for the final part of our deep dive? We've got some key takeaways to explore for aspiring leaders, for seasoned pros, everyone.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
All right, so welcome back to the deep dive. We've been through a lot today.
We have really explored some hidden depths of leadership.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, let's just take a minute to think about everything we've heard, all these different voices, perspectives. What really sticks out to you?
For me, it's that constant focus on service. It's like it's the foundation of true leadership, whether it's making those quiet sacrifices, taking on those burdens behind the scenes, or just simply putting the team's needs first. That idea of service, it just seems to run through all these stories.
Yeah. Yeah, it really flips that old idea of leadership on its head, right? It's not about climbing the ladder or wielding power. It's about empowering others.
Exactly. Creating an environment where everyone can thrive. And that environment, like we've heard, it's often built on authenticity and vulnerability.
Yeah.
Those leaders who are willing to show their human side, admit their mistakes, be open about their struggles, they connect with their teams on a whole other level.
Makes sense, right? I mean, nobody wants to follow a robot.
Right.
When you see your leader being real, it builds trust. It makes you feel like you can be yourself too.
It humanizes the whole concept of leadership. And speaking of being human, remember Venus' post about self-awareness?
Oh, yeah. Super important.
That one really resonated with me.
Me too. It's like effective leadership isn't just about what you do. It's about what's going on up here.
Right.
Understanding your strengths, your weaknesses, those triggers that can trip you up.
It's constant process, of self-discovery and growth.
Mm.
The best leaders are the ones who are always learning, always evolving.
And you know what else? What else really got me thinking? That whole idea of gratitude as a leadership tool.
Oh, yeah.
At first, I was like, wait, shouldn't a leader be, tough, decisive? Where does gratitude fit in? But then I started thinking about, like, the leaders I've really admired.
Yeah.
And you're right. They were the ones who made me feel appreciated, valued.
And gratitude, it creates this amazing feedback loop.
Hmm.
When people feel appreciated, they naturally want to go the extra mile, which just leads to more appreciation. Everyone wins.
So where does all of this leave us? We've explored this side of leadership that doesn't always get talked about. The sacrifices, the tough moments, those quiet wins behind the scenes.
We've seen that true leadership, it's about service, it's about authenticity, and it's about always finding ways to empower those around you.
It's about being, what was it, the last to eat?
Yeah, AJ's words. But this is just the start of the conversation, wouldn't you say?
For sure. Leadership, it's a journey. There's always more to learn.
Absolutely.
So as you continue on your leadership journey, wherever you are on that path, we really encourage you to think about what we've talked about today.
Yeah.
Think about those leaders you really admire. What makes them special? How do those qualities line up with everything we've been exploring? This whole idea of servant leadership, authentic leadership.
And how can you, bring those principles into your own leadership style? Make a real difference for your team, for your organization.
It's important to remember leadership isn't about the title. It's not about, being the boss. It's about the choices you make every single day to serve, to empower, to inspire those around you.
Keep learning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep into the world of leadership.
Until next time.